Hi everyone, welcome back to WHU TV. My name is John, your host as always. We are now on day 6 of 12 days of a West Ham Christmas, where we are going to be talking about the late great Bobby Moore. Robert Frederick Chelsea Moore was born in Barking in Essex, as it was at that time before it changed to Newham in the 1960s, on the 12th of April in 1941. The Moore House was situated in Waverley Gardens in Barking. The house has a blue English heritage plaque to honour his memory a few years after he died. Bobby honed his football skills having a kickabout at Greatfields Park in Barking with his dad and uncle. Now, as I've mentioned on previous videos before, his uncle lived opposite our grandparents. So we had a bit of a family connection there, but that's as far as it went really, to be honest. He attended Westbury Primary School in Barking and also Tom Hood School in Leytonstone, and played for both teams as a kid. He'd also used to sneak into Charlton Athletic games when he was young to watch games, and also sneak into the bowling to watch West Ham games as well. Bobby also played for the English youth cricket team alongside future teammate of West Ham, Geoff Hurst. He was picked up by West Ham United in 1956, even at just 15 years old. He originally started out in midfield but kept his number 6, now iconic number, when he moved down into defence. I think it was actually for, I can't remember what the manager was at the time. But in just 2 short years, he through his development as a youth, he came through and made his senior debut in the League One, or in those days known as Division 1, which is the equivalent now of the Premier League, in the 3-2 home victory over Manchester City on the 8th of September 1958. He was replacing Malcolm Allison, who was suffering with tuberculosis at the time. Allison never played for West Ham after that day. Bobby went on to make 544 appearances for West Ham, scoring 24 goals. Now, I know that Bobby is, and quite rightly so, is deemed as a true gentleman of the football game, but there was a side of him that a lot of people didn't get to see. It's been quite well documented in the autobiographies about him, and also the recent ITV 2-episode series that came out, was it 3 years ago, that also mentioned about it as well. His West Ham career, for lack of a better word, was shrouded in greed. There's no other way to put it, really, because he would fundamentally let his contracts run down so he could re-sign and get signing on fees every single time. He was actually in quite a bit of financial disarray, shall we say, unfortunately, because he had a lot of investments that went tits up, which we'll come on to in just a minute. But at the same point, he would let, but as I say, if he hadn't re-signed for West Ham in 1965, then there was a very, very good chance he wouldn't have been, because in those days there was no such rule as the Bosman rule, where players can just up and leave. You were basically tied to the club, and you had to sign a new contract because they couldn't sell you. It was a weird situation, and the Bosman rule was perfect for that. But as I say, if he hadn't re-signed for West Ham in 1965, there's a very, 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 very good chance, because you had to be registered with the club at that point. There was a lot of frustrations going around in the West Ham boardroom at that point. If he hadn't re-signed in 65, then he wouldn't have been part of the World Cup, the 65-66 World Cup squad, and that could have been disastrous, as we may not have won the World Cup without Bobby's brain. I mean, we'll never obviously know. But he made 9 appearances for England in the under-23s, scoring 2 goals, and 108 senior England's appearances, or basically 108 caps, 90 of which as captain, scoring 2 goals. Phenomenal. Absolutely brilliant. You know, only 19 games where he wasn't captain for the England squad. Superb. He also made the motto "win or lose, we're on the booze" very famous, and it is fair to say that he was a regular drinker, and quite like the source, because in 1977 he was banned from driving for a year for being 3 times over the limit when he crashed his Daimler into a bollard in Chigwell, not that far from where he was living at the time. He was a regular of the bowling pub, as we know, and he also opened up his own bar called Moro's, which apparently is now where the ye old Black Ball is in Stratford, and his status in London, and more specifically his status in the East End, helped his businesses flourish. Unfortunately, he was also part of the failed sports marketing and promotion company Challenge. I mean, we'll remember Bobby's shop that was down the Green Street. That unfortunately that didn't last very long either. After only a few years in the early 1990s, Challenge went into liquidation, and so you could say that it was an illustration that leading a nation on the football pitch was more natural, probably came more naturally to him than leading a business, unfortunately. After his West Ham career, he ended up signing for Fulham on a free with quite a high signing-on fee for the time in 1974, and went on to make 124 appearances, including being captain of Fulham when we beat them in the FA Cup final in 1975. He also went to play in the MLS, making 24 appearances and scoring 1 goal on loan at San Antonio Thunder whilst at Fulham in 1976. Made 7 appearances for the Seattle Sounders and also 9 appearances for Herning Fremad in 1978. He then had a little bit of a gap and then turned to management in 1980 when he went to try to manage Oxford City. Unfortunately didn't happen. Then he managed Eastern AA in Hong Kong in 81-82. Eastern AA are still going to this day and are in the Hong Kong version of the Premier League. He also went on to manage Southend from 84 to 86, but unfortunately never really got going as a manager. Now we also know all the stories about how disgraced he was by West Ham, treated disgracefully, I should say, by West Ham and the footballing world after his professional career came to an end. But because the only person that seemed to really take him on board was current West Ham owner, or co-owner I should say, David Sullivan, who was working for the Daily Mail at the time and employed him as a sports journalist. He also went on to work and mentor Jonathan Pearce as a sports journalist, who became a long-term friend of his up until when he died. Excuse me. Bobby's first brush with cancer was in 1964 at the age of just 23 with testicular cancer, but fortunately after surgery the cancer had not spread. In 1991 he went in for emergency surgery for possible colon cancer. On the 14th of February 1993 it was announced that he was suffering from bowel and liver cancer, although unfortunately it had spread much further than this. 3 days later, he commentated on the England versus Montenegro game at Wembley alongside Jonathan Pearce, but sadly passed away a week later on the 24th of February, aged just 51. The first West Ham home game after his death a week later on the 6th of March 93 against Wolverhampton Wanderers. West Ham and Wolves players lined up for a minute's silence tribute for Bobby Moore before the game. The bowling ground was awash with floral tributes, scarves and other football memorabilia from both West Ham fans and those other and of other clubs, as well as we all remember those beautiful and very, very moving images. Before the Wolves game, fellow 1966 World Cup winners Geoff Hurst and the now deceased Martin Peters placed a floral replica of a West Ham shirt showing Bobby's number 6 on the back and laid the wreath at the centre of the pitch before the game started. West Ham rested the number 6 for the game, and Ian Pearce, who normally was wearing 6 at the time, wore the number 12. And we won 3-1 by goals by Trevor Morley, Julian Dix and Matty Holmes. Now obviously a lot later on when in the late 2000s when Lucas Neal was number 6, we permanently retired the number 6 for him completely, and still to this day is still being rested, and quite rightly so, and still should remain that, because I know a few people are asking for the number 6 to come back for Declan Rice, but fortunately that's all gone under the radar now for the last couple of years. On the 28th of June 1993, his memorial service was held at Westminster Abbey, attended by all other members of the 1966 World Cup squad. He was the only sportsman to be honoured that way, the first being West Indian cricketer Sir Frank Worrell. Now, obviously, as we know, there's been since his death, the Bobby Moore Foundation Bobby Moore Fund, I should say, was raised to help research for cancer, for liver and bowel cancer research. And I'm very, very, very proud as a West Ham fan to know that that foundation is still going and going strong to this day. And there's also, as I mentioned in the West Ham charity video that I did a couple of days ago, that there's also the Moore Family Foundation as well, which are helping families to come to terms with a lot of things, not just death of cancer, but other things, and helping people get back on their feet in many ways. So guys, thank you very much for your patience on this, and thank you very much for watching. If you like what I'm doing, then by all means, as usual, just click the subscribe button. If you want to pick up a Bobby Moore retro shirt, there's plenty to choose from in the channel sponsor 3retro.com, affiliate link in the description below. So thank you very much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I hope that some of you, especially the youngsters, have learned a few things in relation to Bobby Moore, late great Bobby Moore, a hero, complete hero of mine, regardless of his personal situations that he had. But yeah, very, very beautiful player on the pitch, and a very beautiful man off the pitch. So thank you very much for your time, and I will see you tomorrow.